Welcome back to U.S. Farm Report. All right, a lot more to talk about for our marketing roundtable this weekend from Kansas State University. Glynn, let's talk about cattle numbers. Drought, we know it has been a devastating drought here in Kansas. Looking at the latest drought monitor, not much improvement. Saw some rain this week, but really not enough. So when you look at these cattle numbers and the cattle contraction that we've already seen take place, do you think those numbers are baked in or coming, with the next cattle inventory report? Do you think we could have a bit of a surprise?
There's a lot of uncertainty on what that you're alluding to, the January cattle inventory report. The most common estimate is we'll be below 29 million beef cows in the U.S. in that report, which would be about a 4% decline compared to last year. For quick reference for our listeners, if that's realized, if we're below 29 million, we got to go back to 2014 was the last time that was the case. And before 2014, you got to go back about 40 years since that was the case. So it is a historic pull down in the number of beef cows, but I think it's largely baked into the markets, to answer your question. So I think the market is expecting that. If we have a big change from that, that would be a surprise, but something on the order of about a 4% decline year over year in U.S. beef cow numbers is what nationally we're expecting, and that's important to emphasize the word national because drought is not a national phenomenon, right?
But it is hitting the core of kind of where we are seeing cattle raised in the country. And so when you look at the supply side, that seems like a bullish factor, but then you have demand. And that what we talked about before, are we going to see recession and inflation impact? And you say it's already impacting some consumer decisions, but which wins out? I mean, are you worried that the demand side will struggle enough that even with tighter supplies, we're going to have some issues with cattle prices next year?
So yes, I am concerned, to put a bow around this, but supply side forces are definitely supportive. We have fewer animals coming in. In the cattle industry, there's a 2 or almost 3 year lag at times from when we pull a decision to expand or contract the herd and what that does to beef supply. So we're going to have less beef on the domestic market, but it's not just domestic, it's also foreign. So foreign demand for U.S. beef is very strong despite a high U.S. dollar. We can't take that for granted. So it's the domestic demand as well as foreign demand that both are at play from geopolitical and macroeconomic forces. I am concerned that we'll have some global and at home demand slippage, but I think there's reason to be optimistic. We're going to pull supply down enough that will offset it. So that brings up other challenges about utilization of feed yards and packing plants. It's a whole lot of stuff we could talk about there, but if you just jump to the end of the day cattle prices, I think there's reasons to believe that cattle prices are very likely going to be higher over the next 2 years.
Lonnie, I know you also look at consumer behavior. So when you look at how we're seeing that change kind of on meat demand, I know you focus more on the pet food side of it, but are you seeing consumer behavior change at all post-COVID, and especially now that we are seeing these higher prices?
Yes. One of the things that we're seeing, especially in pet food, the prices of pet food is rising. The demand for pet food is rising, yet the quantity of pet food that's purchased at one time is dropping. And we're also seeing an increase in the protein levels and protein demand in pet food that is primarily driven by animal-based proteins, which is a byproduct of the human-grade food that's going on. But overall, the actual products that's being demanded is not shifting, but the quantity that's being purchased.
Now, I know a lot of different grains, a lot of different meat products go into the pet food market. Are we seeing that demand change at all that could impact farmers and ranchers here in Kansas, whether it be less crops, more meat? I mean, are you seeing any of that change from the pet food side?
Yes, so we are seeing, as I said, a rise in the protein levels and protein demand, which is driving a new market for more plant-based proteins, which create opportunities for farmers to take advantage. In terms of the protein demand from chicken, beef, lamb, veal, we are seeing a rise in more specialized products. So some of these specialized meats that is driven primarily from human demand as well.
Well, Parker, we have a very important election coming up in a couple weeks. I know we've mentioned that, but depending on that outcome, could it impact the direction that we take in these upcoming Farm Bill discussions?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of factors that play into the Farm Bill. It's a huge omnibus package that includes a lot of different titles and a lot of different things. I think one of the biggest challenges when we look at this upcoming Farm Bill is, one, we're behind, and it's set to expire here in September of the next year. So there's a lot of work to be done, and I think there's a lot been put off because of the election. So I think that in and of itself has been an impact. But I think one of the bigger challenges we're looking at, so as we talked about the conservation title, sustainability, and some of those initiatives, I think it's looking at how can you apply those. It's hard to take the federal government and apply a conservation program because those practices and those policies are very dependent upon where those regions are at. So what's going to work is a great conservation program in western Kansas might not work for corn producers in Iowa or somebody in northeast Texas or wherever you're at. So it's hard to apply a federal policy like that on a down ingrained regional level. So I think that's one of the challenges we're going to see is there's an increased focus on conservation and sustainability. But again, I think if we're able to find the ways that those work well in specific regions, it doesn't have to be at the detriment of other traditional farm program expenditures. I think it can work really well and support our farm and ranch farmers, ranchers, and agricultural producers.
All right. Well, thank you all for being here. We really appreciate it. We need to take a quick break, and then we'll have much more right here on U.S. Farm Report.